We now come to the third oral question. Lord Randall of Uxbridge.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
Lord Goldsmith of Richmond Park.
My Lords, the Government has always been clear of the need to phase out rotational burning of protected blanket bog to conserve these vulnerable habitats, and we're looking at how legislation could achieve this. Real progress is, however, being made in promoting sustainable alternatives. We have urged landowners to adopt these alternatives and to continue to work with us constructively.
Lord Randall.
I thank my noble friend for his answer, and I draw attention to my environmental entries in the register. I recognise, my Lords, that there is not a consensus about this issue, so can my noble friend tell us what the scientific advice from his department is about this matter?
The noble lord is right that there is much debate around the issue, and that debate has prompted a great deal of research, particularly over the last decade, and the government has kept abreast of all the latest scientific evidence to inform its policy approach. However, overall, the evidence shows that burning on blanket bog is detrimental, as it moves the bog away from its original wet state, and it risks vulnerable peat bogs being converted to drier heathland habitat. DEFRA's view, therefore, is that ending burning on protected deep peat is the best approach for achieving habitat restoration and maximising the full suite of ecosystem benefits that would arise.
Baroness Young of Ulscone.
I draw attention to my interests in the register. The government hoped for a voluntary surrender of burning consents, but no one volunteered, and burnings increased. The heather and moorland burning regulations are 13 years out of date and don't meet the government's commitments to net zero, to biodiversity, to air or water quality. I understand that a draft of proposed new legislation has been prepared. What conceivable legitimate excuse can the Minister give us for delaying any further the legislation the government promised to end rotational burning of blanket bog by October 2019?
We're currently engaging with stakeholders on the content of the England peat strategy, and we expect it to be published later this year. But the government is committed, as I said earlier, to phasing out rotational burning. We're considering all the evidence to ensure that any legislation actually works. It is undoubtedly a complex issue, and it's important that we take the right steps to restore and protect this valuable habitat.
Baroness Bennett of Manor Castle.
My Lords, I refer the Minister to page 95 of the report, where the independent committee says burning is highly damaging to the peat and to the range of environmental benefits that well-functioning peat can deliver. A voluntary cessation of this activity has not produced the desired outcome, so the practice should be banned across the UK with immediate effect. Does the Minister fully accept and endorse those words? If so, why in his initial answer did he use the words phase out and refer to real progress from voluntary efforts, which contradicts what the report says?
As I've said, the government is committed to ending this practice, and the government is looking actively at what the best legislative solution would be. We recognise, as the Honourable Baroness, the noble Baroness does, that the voluntary approach has not worked. So, in that regard, yes, I can agree with the statement that she made.
Baroness Redfern.
My Lords, we have debated many times in the House regarding our tree planting strategy in reducing our carbon footprint. But today's question brings to the fore just how important our peatlands are. May I ask my noble friend, the Minister, if he has any latest figures of how many managed estates have agreed to give up their consent to burn and in turn are managing alternatives? Thank you.
The answer to the noble Baroness is that a significant number have made that decision voluntarily. However, I'm afraid I can't provide the precise number, so I will have to write to her after this session.
Baroness Bakewell of Hardington Mandeville.
My Lords, this is an issue which polarises opinions. Considerable damage was caused by the peat fires on Saddleworth Moor, the result of arson, and the wildfire on Scotland's flow country. These fires were not the result of rotational heather low burning, which has many benefits. Before we throw the metaphorical baby out with the bathwater, despite what the Minister says about the scientific evidence, it is out of date. Would it not be better to update this scientific evidence before we decide on rotational heather burning on peat moorlands? Would the Minister agree?
The science is continuing to evolve. It's not a matter of the science being out of date. The government is very aware of the wildfire risk presented by dry conditions on moorland, and Natural England has carried out a review into the causes, the severity, and the management practices that are best placed to mitigate that risk, and we're considering that alongside other evidence. But I can say that some of the clearest evidence that we have is that ensuring that peatlands are wet and in a natural state is the best way to minimise wildfire risks. It also tells us, incidentally, that managed burning results in an increase in vegetation types like heather, which have a higher fuel load as compared with natural blanket bog vegetation.
Lord McCall of Dulwich.
My Lords, could I ask the Minister, what are the implications for air quality on habitation following this burning of nearby moorlands, and what has been the effect of this burning on the bird population, please?
The Noble Lord raises an important point, and there's no doubt that burning has an impact. But if the department has data, precise data as to the extent of that effect, I'm afraid I have not seen it. So again, I'm afraid I'm going to have to get back to the Noble Lord with that answer.
Lord Cameron of Dillington.
I was wondering if the Minister thought it wise to allow heather to grow tall and become an unbroken fire hazard in dry summers. Summer hill fires can burn for months and destroy millions of tonnes of our peat. And also if he thought it wise to curtail the rotational management of heather, which provides seeds and green shoots for our highly threatened curlews, lapwings, merlins, plover and dunlin, etc. And while burning heather in March, when the peat is sodden from winter rains and therefore completely safe from harm and may not be perfect, would it not be wise to find an alternative form of heather management before doing away with the tried and tested system we have?
So I refer the Noble Lord to an earlier answer I gave in relation to wildfire risk, which is the issue that he has subsequently raised again. However, we're not talking, I don't think anyone is proposing simply allowing the heather to continue uncontrolled, and the alternative to burning obviously is cutting, and the department has been looking very closely at what the additional burden would be on business were cutting to be generalised, and the figure that the department has come up with in total is £500,000 per year for the sector. And that's based on information that's been provided to us by landowners and managers.
Baroness Jones of Whitchurch.
If the government haven't found a way to table their own legislation to ban the burning of peat by the end of the year, would the Minister agree to work with us on a cross-party basis to deliver a ban in the Environment Bill, which comes to the Lords in the new year?
I would be very happy to commit to discussing and sharing the evidence we have with the Noble Baroness and to hearing whatever ideas she has for a solution. But we are determined as a government to achieve a solution through legislation and through other means, and I'd be very happy to have those discussions with her at any time.
Lord Teverson. Lord Teverson.
My Lords, as the Minister will know, peatlands are one of the most important terrestrial carbon sinks that we have. Apart from burning, peat extraction is a major issue in terms of the health of those peatlands. Will the government, in its consideration of future peat management, also ban the use of peat for horticultural purposes and indeed the import of peat as well, as the Climate Change Committee has also recommended?
It's an extremely important point, and it's an issue that I've followed myself very closely for some time, and he makes a compelling case, and I will take his remarks back to the department and share them with the Secretary of State. Just on a related note, the upland partnership, which does not favour a burning ban, its main argument is that burning sequesters carbon in the form of charcoal. And that is an area of disputed science, and there's strong opinions on both sides, but it does not alter our opinion that burning damages the blanket bog habitat. And to meet our nature recovery and our climate targets, we think the best way to do that is through healthy habitats and well-functioning ecosystems.
Lord Cripps.
Blanket bog, to which the Noble Lord the Minister has referred on a number of occasions, is of course a great method of storing water and holding water back so that it doesn't go down into the valleys and flood the towns and villages below. one of the consequences of draining sphagnum bog and turning it into heather moor or short grass is that people in the valleys suffer increased flood risk. I wonder if the noble Lord the Minister has any figures to hand on the cost to this country of flood damage in the valleys to people and properties as compared with the financial benefits of managing moorland by draining and having it as heather moor and short grass.
Good question. It's extremely difficult to attach a particular flooding event with a particular cause because there are so many causes. But he's absolutely right that damage to the natural environment exacerbates flood risk, and that's why as part of our flood strategy, which has been developed, there is a significantly increased emphasis on nature-based solutions to flooding. And part of that is planting trees in the appropriate areas. Part of that also is restoring peatlands.
My Lords, the time allowed for this question has elapsed.